Hey, this is Derek. I want to make a video about ghostwriting. This is something that's interested me for a long time, and I guess only this month it's kind of come back to the front of my attention. I made a video recently about book editing and how to hire an editor and work with an editor. I'm personally not really doing editing anymore, and one of the reasons that I'm resistant to doing editing is because an editor can't really fix the main problems. An editor can make your book better, but almost always, like, if the book isn't well written, if it isn't organized well, if it doesn't have the right content, an editor can't fix that problem, and it's not going to make the book more successful. So that's why personally, even though after I got my PhD in literature, I did a lot of editing. I'm really good at it. I enjoy doing it, but I just don't feel like I can provide enough value to the authors to really justify it. So I focus more on courses about writing and helping people to write their own books. I mostly focus on writing my own fiction. But I'm a little curious about ghostwriting because I think it can be a really difficult skill. I think there are definitely a lot of people, there's a lot of demand for it because there are people who want to have a book but don't want to write themselves, or they need a book for professional reasons. They want to put it on their website, they want to use it for lead gen, to become an influencer, to build a platform, to sell services or courses, or even if they already have, $1 million business and they just want to put out a book as just another way to reach a new audience and kind of cement their position in the space. There's a lot of ways to use a book for business, and many people just don't have time to write themselves, or they're not interested in writing themselves. Writing a book is a skill I've spent like decades learning how to do well. And you may not want to learn how to become a great writer and write great books. If you just want to have one book out for business reasons, or maybe you have a story to tell, but you don't want to become a full-time writer, there are reasons why working with a ghostwriter is attractive. And if you're a writer like I am, you may have considered writing books for other people or getting into ghostwriting. So there's a question of, what's a book worth? How much should you pay for ghostwriting, and how much should you charge for ghostwriting? It comes around, what's a book worth? And this is why it's really important, because a lot of writers on the writing side will feel like they need to charge a certain amount because their book is valuable, or their time is valuable, or their skills are valuable. But actually, the only value of a book is the money it's going to make, or the value for the person who's paying for it, basically. So an author would invest in a book hoping to recoup the investment. A business person also, they would pay for ghostwriting as a business investment. So the amount that they're willing to pay depends on how much they can earn. So if I was ghostwriting for a certain client who had $1 million business, I would write a certain book and it would be worth a certain amount for them, because it's only a fraction of their giant marketing budget. Whereas if I'm writing a book for someone who has no idea how to sell the book and doesn't have any money, they wouldn't be able to afford me. So there's a mismatch of, I don't think there's a necessarily a price, but I'll talk about kind of the range. So if you Google like how much does ghostwriting cost, you'll find an average from about $70,000 to $20,000, which can seem really expensive. So that's kind of cool. Ghostwriting will probably take 3 months to 6 months of full-time work. So the people who are doing ghostwriting full-time, they take a couple clients a year. It's a lot of work, a lot of research. It depends on their process. They may have to like schedule interviews. If they're writing like a biography and they have to write it in the person's voice, they're also not going to get credit or any future earnings from this book. Most ghostwriters, they give up attribution and also a percentage of earnings. So they get paid for the time they spend. And I wrote something recently about writing, but if I can write 3,000 words a day, which is possible, I could write a book in a month, but actually it's really going to take at least 3 months, and probably more like 6 months, depending on how much work I need to do with the client and how much revision and editing and changes. It really depends on the client you're working with and what they're going to expect. And then formatting and design, depending on what you're including in your ghostwriting package, it would take more money. If I write 1,000 words an hour, it would take me about 60 hours to write a 60,000 word book, which is kind of average. It'd probably take me at least another 40 hours for revision, editing. Assuming like on the low end, it'll take 100 hours to write a book. That means if I was getting paid $20,000, then I'd be making $200 an hour, which may seem really high, but this is a really high value skill. If you're a full-time ghostwriter, if you know how to not only write a good book, but write a good book that sells. So specifically a book that's going to grow your business, or is going to make you look good or bring you new clients, depending on the purpose of your book, that's something you would have to pay more for. Not just, a well-written book, because a lot of people, they'll hire a ghostwriter and they'll get a book, but they won't know what to do with it or how to market it or how to sell it. You don't want a book that just sits there on Amazon with 0 reviews and doesn't sell, because that's kind of a waste of an investment. So ideally you would hire a ghostwriter who also knows book marketing and publishing, which is kind of why I'm attracted to. I'm not sure yet if I'm going to offer a ghostwriting service, but if I did so, it would include, making your book #1 bestseller and also building a funnel probably so that your book, brings you new business. It kind of depends on what your business is and what I could do for you. So if I did play with the idea of ghostwriting, I think $20,000 is kind of the low end of what I would charge. Although at $20,000, even though it's good money, it's not really what I want to do, and my skills are really valuable. So I would probably, if I was going to do it at all, I would shoot for the high-end ghostwriting market. And that's kind of why I'm excited about it, because there's a lot of ghostwriters who are self-employed, small businesses. There's a few kind of farms where they have lots of ghostwriters and they kind of farm it out. But I don't think anyone's really cornered the ghostwriting space or done content marketing for ghostwriting and carved out themselves as the expert ghostwriter, which I think is an opportunity. So I'm kind of tempted to do that for myself, whether or not I actually take ghostwriting clients and just aim for the high end and say I only charge $50,000 or whatever to ghostwrite books. But I can do that because I have a platform. I know writing, I know business, I know publishing and marketing. So I know that I will be able to get the traffic. If I can get the traffic, I can set my own prices and choose the clients I want to work with. I can get 100 applications and choose one client if I want to that I feel confident about or that I'm excited about. I can only take on the work that I'm really passionate about, which will be more enjoyable for me because I don't need to do it. I only want to take work that's enjoyable. But also I like to use my skills to positive effect and to do new things that I haven't really done before. On the other end of all of that though, on the low end of ghostwriting, you can hire a ghostwriter from Fiverr.com, a writer. You can hire a ghostwriter from Upwork, and you can pay much less. I have friends who pay $500 for a book, for like a 50,000 word book. So the difference is my friends who are publishers or they're hiring ghostwriters to write fiction, the value is not necessarily in the writing. So I've played with the idea of hiring people to ghostwrite for me because I have really good novel ideas. I can create a plot really quickly. I can create a really tight, beautiful, strong story idea. For me, that's the value. There's a million ways to tell that story, but I can have somebody else draft it quickly and I can edit it and revise it and polish it until it's good. And then I feel like I've still done most of the work and still basically my story, but I just sped up my process by hiring it out. It's not something I would pay a lot more for because for like fiction's not necessarily a business growth. My friends who hire out ghostwriters, they have a whole publishing empire and they have 20 books or 50 books, so they invest in all of these books and they build up a big backlist and that's their business. That's why they're paying for it. It's not worth more than that because those writers, even if they're good writers, they aren't able to write books that sell on their own, or maybe they don't have the investment to buy a cover or marketing, editing, all of the other pieces that go into publishing. So even if they're good writers, they may not be able to tell a good story, which means their writing isn't actually valuable because they couldn't do it themselves. And for them, if they can make $500, and maybe they write really quickly, if they can make $500 a month extra money by writing fiction, it's a good deal for them. So there is a low-end scale where you can find writers, and it's possible to find like really good writers who are, they love what they do and you're paying them, but they're good enough to write good stories. But maybe they're not writing the plots. It kind of depends who you hire. I think personally, if I was hiring ghostwriters, I would only write the plots myself. But I know people who just hire ghostwriters and say, write me an urban fantasy and do whatever you want. And they just buy the stuff and they publish it because it's good enough as long as they have a lot of content. It got really dark, so I moved inside just to finish this up. I'm at one of my favorite coffee spots in Chiang Mai, but I woke up a little bit late, so it's kind of already, sunset, and I haven't started working on my novel yet. But I'm going to finish this video up with the reason I'm attracted to ghostwriting is because there's a lot of volatility where you can hire a ghostwriter for $1,000 or a couple $1,000 or $50,000, and there's a lot of ghostwriters who I don't necessarily think they're that skilled. They've just set themselves up as ghostwriters, and maybe they're writers, but they don't know business, they don't know publishing, they don't know book design or marketing, they don't know how to build a funnel. So like even if you spend that much money on a book, you're not really getting that much back, because you still have to do all these other things. So I'm tempted with the idea of setting up some kind of a ghostwriting package, and just doing it better. I always think, like, if there's a demand for this stuff, and I think there is a demand for ghostwriting, but the demand isn't being met very well. So it's kind of like, it's hard to find a good ghostwriter. It's hard to know whether or not they're actually talented. It's hard to know how much to pay, if you're paying way too much or way too little. So that's kind of why I'm interested in, setting up some space where I have my own details of what I think a ghostwriter should do or should charge, or some of the variables. And maybe I'll just set up a blog or write a long blog post or article about it, which is probably where I'll put this video. It's not necessarily something that I'm going to be doing in the future, but I'm kind of tempted to play with the idea and just see where it leads, because I'm not really working with clients anymore. I am just focused on writing my own books, but I do think it's something that's really interesting, and I do love the idea of like partnering with other people or co-writing with other people, mostly so that I can have experience with other things or get behind projects I'm really excited about, or things I already love to do or love to research, or things that I know a lot about that I can like help somebody else put into a book. Anyways, those are my thoughts about ghostwriting. I hope this is a little bit illuminating. I think it is a little bit still of a Wild West. Self-publishing is still a Wild West area, even though it's pretty well established. But I think ghostwriting is, there are some big changes happening. I was going to put in a quote. I was going to start this video with a quote about when I was an artist a long time ago. Someone told me the only artists who are making any money are tattoo artists. And the reason that's true, like even if you have a really high value skill, it doesn't matter if you're a really good artist unless you're making something people are willing to pay for. So tattoo artists, they are skilled artists who make something that other people actually want. And they can do a lot of volume, and they have, a business around their skill. I think ghostwriting could be kind of the same way. It's a way where you can use your writing to make a lot of money. The alternative, of course, is to do content marketing or just to write your own books, which is kind of what I focus on. All of my books, I focus on making about $1,000 a month with my book, so I set the bar for 10 grand. All of my books, if I'm going to spend, a few months writing a book, I want to make 10 grand in its lifetime, which will probably make in its first year, actually. But now I'm actually moving into setting the bar higher. If I launch a book now, I want to do better than that. I want to, not just, make a little bit of money on the side. I want to become a well-known, famous author with some like big blockbuster general nonfiction bestsellers. So that's kind of what I'm doing over the next couple of years. But I'm getting really good at writing books in a way that few people have really focused on. Few people have really dove in on the process. Like, how exactly do you put together a good book that readers love, that gets shared, that gets, the viral component, that gets hundreds of reviews? Not just, because I've seen a lot of people who, they put out a book, or they sign up for a service that'll help them with the coaching, they'll put out a book, but it's just all right. Like, it's okay, it's a calling card or whatever, but it's not a great book. They give out copies at conferences, but it's not, I think if you're going to do it, if you're going to spend money on it, if you're going to put in the time, the effort, even if you're hiring a ghostwriter or doing it for yourself, I think you might as well do it really well, and write a book that's really going to matter, and people are going to love it. So that's what I focus on helping people with. That's why I'm attracted with ghostwriting. Anyway, so I hope this video helps you to think about some of those ideas.